We don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know, Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. The government says it will challenge the ruling by the Court of Appeal that the Rwanda asylum policy is unlawful. Judges say sending asylum seekers to Rwanda will be unlawful unless and until the deficiencies in Rwanda's government asylum processes are corrected. The Prime Minister says he fundamentally disagreed with the decision, and the Home Secretary also said she remains fully committed despite the legal setback. Suella Braverman also suggested the current system was rigged against the British people.
Fair, Mr. Speaker, on people and our partners in the developing world, that we in the West continue to maintain an asylum seeker system so open to abuse that it incentivises mass flows of economic migration into Europe, lining the pockets of people smugglers and turning our seas into graveyards, all in the name of a phony humanitarianism.
Boris Johnson's allies have been criticised today by the Privileges Committee for what it describes as undermining House of Commons procedures. They include Priti Patel, Nadine Dorries and Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. The Privileges Committee report 2 weeks ago found the former Prime Minister had repeatedly misled Parliament over COVID breaches at Number 10 during lockdown. Well, the inquiry now says MPs should be considering whether or not their actions could be in contempt of Parliament and what further action would need to be taken. Earlier today, GB News' Jacob Rees-Mogg had this to say.
And this is a fundamental challenge to freedom of speech. As members of the House, we must be able to ask questions of the committee. As I said a couple of weeks ago, and I'll repeat, criticism is not obstruction.
Thames Water has had to appoint a new chair amid pressures that the company faces concerning its finances. Sir Adrian Montague, previously chair of Anglian Water, is going to take over the role on July the 10th. He's replacing Sarah Bentley. Thames Water says it's working with shareholders to secure extra funding as ministers draw up contingency plans to possibly nationalise the company in the event of its collapse. The UK's biggest water supplier is battling to service its £14 billion worth of debt following interest rate rises. Nicola Sturgeon told the COVID-19 inquiry today that Scotland had no plan for a non-flu pandemic and that learning from the episode was of critical importance. The former First Minister was being questioned this morning on how prepared Scotland was, as well as how she, as a politician, handled the pandemic. She also told the inquiry her government did its best, but admitted it didn't get everything right. And lastly, one of the world's most used artificial sweeteners could be declared a potential carcinogen as soon as next month. New research from the World Health Organization has found aspartame, which is used in diet sodas and chewing gum, as well as many other products, could cause cancer. Last month, the WHO published guidelines advising consumers not to use artificial sweeteners to lose weight, and it caused a furore in the food industry. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at Friday's front pages. I'm Stephen Allen and I'm joined by a man who appeared in a Radio 4 sitcom, Josh Howie, and a man who appears in a special file at Ofcom. It's Lewis Schaefer. How are you both doing? Still doing all right? I felt some tension, Lewis, when I mentioned that. You still getting the flashbacks?
Well, it's been the highlight of my life, basically, to get that many complaints against me.
I know, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of the top, Andrew Doyle told me it was one of the top complainant programs.
It's one of the top complaint programs about So Far. The night is young.
Oh, we can do this, mate. We're going to go, let's take it to the next level, right? What don't you believe in?
Everything.
There we go.
got 19
Okay,
stories.
start those complaints. Let's go.
What could possibly go wrong? Right, let's take a look at those front pages first of all. The Daily Mail says we should decide who comes here, not criminal gangs, is their front page. The Telegraph, biggest NHS reform in its history to save £10 billion. The Guardian says Tories risk bitter legal feud after Rwanda policy is ruled unlawful. The Eye, mortgage deals hiked again as big six banks raise their prices. The Express goes with Rishi's radical plan to fix NHS once and for all. And finally, your Daily Star, Boffin's brains explode. And those are your front pages. And we begin with the Daily Mail. Josh, what's on their front page?
Well, we've got a picture of Naomi Campbell's had a new baby. Oh. That's not her second baby. She's 53. So the reason why that's more alarming to me than the immigration story is that my wife is 48. I was assured that it was over, the parenting, so I'm a little bit scared. Because whilst I'm sure people in this country are concerned about who's coming into this country, I'm concerned about who's coming into my flat.
Wonder where that sentence was going to end for a second?
Oh, yes. Sorry. Anyway, but yes, the big story is we should decide who comes here, not criminal gangs. This is what Rishi Sunak said after the Court of Appeal found 2-1 that the Rwanda scheme was illegal, essentially. The reason being that Rwanda was not seen as a safe place. So the idea of you can do this deportation concept, but the idea is that if people were sent there, they wouldn't necessarily be safe. It would break the Geneva Convention, and also that there is not people might be sent back to their home countries, and there are definitely actual bad things going out there in the world, even though, of course, there's also economic migrants and whatnot. Anyway, so it seems like the Rishi Sunak is saying that they're going to take that further, and supposedly the government's confident of this one day going through. What do you want to say?
Yeah,
about
Lewis,
this?
do you think this is... Surely we predicted this all along, isn't it? It was never going to work, but at least they get to blame its failure on lefty lawyers, so the government looks like they're doing something.
I think you're right. It's never going to work because it's cruel and unusual punishment to send someone to Rwanda. At least this is what they're thinking. This is they're saying, oh, my God, it's horrible. They're being sent to Rwanda. It could just turn out that Rwanda turns out to be an amazing place. Let's just say they move there, and they're so happy there. They take over the country, and they're really doing great. And Rwanda becomes a super prosperous place, and Britain and the West go totally down the toilet, and they're happy that they went to Rwanda.
And they'll send people back to the UK.
Yeah, they'll punish them by sending them to the UK, and they'll fight not to go to the exactly. Yeah. But so at the end of the day, and this is the thing you cannot talk about is the government cannot do the thing that they need to do to stop people from coming, which is either you put up.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, but I was going to say just previously on this show, Josh pointed out, legally you can send to a safe third country. You just need a safe third-party country. They've said Rwanda's not one. Find one, so the government can do what they need to do. Right, but what safe country wants to take Rwanda?
Looking at you, I just had the most horrible thought. Okay, just hear me out. Something from your brain popped into my brain. Yeah. Like you were about to say something about borders and stuff like that. We can't have borders. Let's save the planet, build some more of those wind things, and then any boats that sort of come close get pushed back.
Yeah, by wind.
I like it. I like it. Only thing is, I don't think they're fans. They're wind turbines. I don't think they produce the wind.
They look like
Although
fans.
They move faster on windy days.
I'm trying to multitask.
It's a joke, Steve.
No, don't.
Wasn't a good joke, but it was a joke.
Okay.
No, I don't mean it that way. I don't mean it.
Yeah. What way do you mean it?
I mean the problem is this is a problem. The thing you cannot say what the real solution is. There's only two solutions, which is you make it completely and I don't support this. I don't support this. I'm a comedian. I don't care. You make it totally unpalatable to try to come to this country, or you make it impossible to come to the country. One of the two things. You either build a wall if you can, and maybe drain the channel. Drain the channel.
A wall to stop boats.
A wall to, and then
It's a good idea.
And then I said drain the channel.
Okay,
I said drain
fine.
the channel.
Okay. Next up, let's go to the Telegraph and see what sense you can make of that, Lewis.
I can't make any sense of it because I can't make any sense of the NHS, and I've been totally involved because everybody knows that I'm totally Mr. Health. I would say health kick, or you could say hypochondriac, and I've been totally involved. It says the NHS reforms in biggest NHS reforms in history to save taxpayers £10 billion, which you will explain how the savings is. I can only see them spending money on getting more doctors and more nurses.
It's a brilliant idea. The concept is they're going to basically hire lots of trainees.
Right.
Who pay less, but like loads and loads of trainees and apprentices, like straight out of school, straight into the apprenticeship. So the concept is we have these very high waiting lists.
Yeah.
And what they're going to do is they're going to kill everybody, so those waiting lists go lower. It's absolutely
But
genius.
the truth, at the end of the day, and the people are going to know what I'm going to say, they're going to say, we need to cut the NHS by 95% of the doctors. It doesn't matter how many doctors they are. The advice is still bad. They're still being pushed, anti-cholesterol pills. The way they're treating high blood pressure is ridiculous.
Before we travel too far away from the story, though, into which I presume is on your blog, what you're about to say. So the idea is that you don't have to use agency staff, and they are the ones who are really expensive.
Huge part of the bill, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
How you make some
But
sense.
agency staff are, to be fair, trained. Like fully trained, experienced. So the idea of just sort of chucking loads of people out there straight from school, and also shortening, they're saying that short the medical degree from 5 years to 4 years. I kind of want my doctor to do 5 years. I want the full 5 years.
You watch 3 series of House, you can have a good guess at quite a lot of things. So I reckon they could do that.
Do you know what, Steve? This is where I totally always completely disagree with you, is that the NHS, God bless them, they're trying their best. They're totally wrong about most things except for my doctor, who's amazing, but and my endocrinologist and my cardiologist. But
so basically, half of the budget for the NHS is just you.
Basically,
coming over to here with your endocrinologist, blah blah blah,
I didn't
and it's all you.
It is.
And I know you, and you haven't earned any money for 20 years, so there's no way you pay the taxes.
They need to believe.
Let's move on to the Guardian.
They need to believe I'm a professional.
Well,
Steve,
no one believes.
Would you shut him up now?
I'm definitely doing that. Shut it down and move on to the Guardian now, Josh. What's on their front page?
Yeah, so we got some more water and battled water firm may delay its accounts. That's Thames Water refusing basically to say how skint they are. And we've got a story we can do later, but the big one here, we've got a picture on the front of justice for Nahel. This is all kicking off in France. That is the victim's mother, a 17-year-old boy who was shot a couple of days ago in Paris on the outskirts by a traffic stop. And this, I believe, is the 13th or second or third this year, and maybe it was 13 last year. And the policeman said at the time that he was about to be driven over, like the kid drove off basically, and then obviously social media footage came out that it was like, no, the kid was driving away. So even though the policeman has now sort of been put under investigation, which is their version of being charged, there's lots of riots, there's lots of kicking off, and I think it's actually gotten worse because it turns out Macron, in the day before when things were kicking off, decided to go and see Elton John. To be fair, it is Elton John's farewell tour, and we know that there's always going to be riots in France. So, yeah.
Yeah, understandable. Let's cross over to our, I presume...
I'm not going to get French complaints, am I?
Given... You wouldn't be able to understand them. No. Given that you're from America, a place where traffic stops end up in shootings sometimes, how does that even happen?
Well, it happens. This is the French problem, which is the French were so arrogant.
One problem?
Basically, the French problem is their arrogance. Is they think they can let in millions and millions of people into the country without in one sort of go and not have any kind of social discord. And this is a country of social discord. Maybe eventually it'll be fine, but as America proves, after 200 years, there's still social discord in America.
So you think it's a racial element to this?
Of course, it's a racial element. It has to do with maybe it's racism because of the cops were being racist, or maybe it's racism that the people felt on the people who were the families who were of the person who was killed, that they are being targeted. Yeah. So it is a racist thing. I think I feel
Look, we just want to know, do you think France exists?
I think France exists.
Okay,
I think France.
We're safe.
I think France has made a mistake. They made a mistake by just letting in millions of people.
Let's move on to the serious.
Is that wrong? Is that wrong for me to say?
Well, it's too late now. You can't take it back.
The complaint's already going out.
I could take it back.
The Daily Star. Lewis, let's go to the front page of the Daily Star, and what are they getting upset about?
This is one of the weirdest stories I've ever seen because you have no idea what it's about. Boffin's brain explode. I mean, what?
Boffin's a sort of a scientist.
Yeah, I know that. Brainiacs take a day off from saving the world and making up baffling formulas for the perfect cup of tea to crack a new fight. Because they don't want to be called boffins.
Yeah.
Boffins.
Yeah, but I think I always love the use of the Star's use of boffins.
Yeah.
For any science story, they just keep on using. And I didn't realise it was obviously some sort of style guide in the Daily Star. Yeah, when they talk about like OnlyFans. They've obviously got like lots of different styles, so they have to do 99% stories on OnlyFans and then one boffin story. Yeah,
because of course in the science community, boffins is our word. We can use it about ourselves, but it is a slur if other people use it.
So. Oh, it's like cis.
Yeah.
No, is that what?
Yeah, same thing. What does the word boffin mean?
No idea. I don't think the word of tabloids. It just means scientist, but
it must mean something.
Nerdy geek.
You know what? If you're out there, go on Twitter and tell us what the word boffin means. Do our work for us.
Well, that's it for part one. Join us in part two, where a GB News presenter gets told off by the Parliamentary Privileges Committee, and a GB News presenter gets the bank accounts frozen. My money is on Lewis for both. I'll see you there.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm your host, Stephen Allen, here with the crime-fighting duo of Josh Howie and Lewis Schaefer, and crime breathes a sigh of relief. Friday's Independent, Josh, and it seems Nigel Farage was with the bank that likes to say no.
Indeed. This is a big story. Okay, I'm just going to... Now, Nigel Farage, fellow GB News, the big star here. I do not agree with him pretty much on any political issue. That's okay. You know what? But he seems like a nice bloke. You can sort of tell that by the way he treats all the producers and whatnot. So, fair enough. But this has got nothing to do with that. This has got to do with his bank just out of nowhere pulling his account and this is what's really disturbing is he's now approached 7 banks since then, and none of them will open an account with him. Now, I watched this video earlier. He explained there's something from the EU called a PEP, person of interest or political person of interest or whatever. That might be part of the reason why. He also posits that it could be ideology. And that is, and the thing is, and I saw someone else I respect, who I agree with politically, go, oh, this is rubbish. And actually, I totally disagree with that person, because we have seen it happen with other people. Certainly people in the whole gender ideology thing. There's a account in Scotland, Wings of Scotland. That person, Wings Over Scotland, they've had their account closed. So this does happen. And it is, in a world where, certainly when we're moving more into a cashless society, you need a bank account. And as Nigel Farage argues in his video, it does everything, let alone getting mortgages or loans and this and that. Just paying for day-to-day stuff nowadays. I mean, I would almost go so far as it's a human right. Now, in the society that we live in, I know it seems ridiculous, but it is. So this is a real problem. And if there is ideological basis going on here, it needs to be sorted, and the government needs to get involved.
Lewis, you strike me as the kind of person who eschews the cashless society, still trading in groats.
What does that mean, the word eschew?
Or groats.
Or groats.
Or bank account money.
Cash, or cash. I mean, the problem with this story is this is the biggest story we've come across. This is totally not a non-story.
What do you call a non-story? A non-story?
This is a real story.
Holy moly.
This is a real story. Whatever you think about Nigel Farage, is the fact that first of all, I'm glad it happened to Nigel Farage, because he can fight. Anybody less than this is basically screwed, has no chance in the world. But what this is the cutting edge of the war between the internationalists or the globalists. I don't want to say that without any kind of...
Just say Jews, mate.
No, it doesn't. I want to use that word. It's not the Jews, Josh. It's the global empire versus the people and the sovereignty of Britain. And the people who are being attacked are people... Basically, Britain is under attack by people who stand up for Britain. British nationalism is under attack by the globalists.
I hadn't seen the globalist element to it, I've got to be honest. Yeah. I think these are, of course, there's international, the banks are owned by different big companies, but I think these are decisions that are made at a local level by British people. I don't think that there's people out there in Switzerland or whatever doing it. No. I think that this is something that's happening here. No, because the reason is, because I'm saying it is because it's not... Other bank accounts that have been closed are closed on a local level. So this needs to be sorted out at a local level and by our government.
These banks are bought and paid for by Vanguard and BlackRock. They're bought and they're under the total control of the international
Yes, I know, but I'm talking at a local level, mate.
Have you seen the film Bank of Dave, where that businessman sets up his own bank?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just saying, Bank of Nigel.
Well, he might...
Heard it here first.
Do you want to know something?
Can you get euros?
Not anymore. The Times, Lewis, and basically it's calling something a kangaroo court. It's ever so slightly undermining it.
Yeah, why not undermine it? And they could stand up for themselves. And Nadine Dorries and...
It's your ex, right?
Yeah, and I like her. And I don't like her. I don't know anything about her, but I'm pretending that I know something about her. And Jacob ReesMogg.
I think you eschewed her once.
I'm going to have to look that up. And I actually know what it means because I studied Latin. Basically, there was a privileges committee which was attacking Johnson, right, for having Partygate, which I said very succinctly that it was absolute. That so what? He had a party. No one believed in it. Anyway, so basically, ReesMogg came to the defense of Johnson, and suddenly that's like an offense to criticize.
The argument is we have a free speech issue versus undermining the levers of our government. And this was what they're saying is a coordinated campaign coming through Conservative Post website and emails coming from different members of the Lords and whatnot to put pressure on the members of the committee, in particular the Tory members of the committee.
Right.
So,
and that's not done a million other ways, a million. Well,
well, that's the question.
And isn't that what democracy is? Is somebody saying what's going on there? And the problem, I think, with this country, which is a great country, I love England, I love Britain, I love the United Kingdom, whatever you call it, is that there needs to be more openness. It's like we can't discuss this. It's going on. Yeah. That's the British
Well, I guess
attitude.
the question is the impact. That for me was what. Did it have any impact? You know, and you're right. People do have a right to question the people involved and whatnot. But they obviously were very unhappy about it.
Free speech should also mean the people questioned have the right to say that question was attempting to undermine the process of the Parliament.
They should have the right, and they could have gotten other MPs to say to Jacob Rees-Mogg, "You should not be saying this."
Which is what they're doing.
Well, they're not doing it now. They're
and then you have the free speech to say that.
No, that's not what they're doing.
I'm going to have the free speech to then question you saying it.
They want to have his, whatever it's called, his rights removed. They want to punish him.
Who? Jacob doesn't say that here.
No.
It doesn't?
No, it doesn't.
I have the right to move on to the next story then. The Sun, Josh, and there's a plan for us to give ourselves medical checks online, which normally I only do on OnlyFans.
Oh, interesting, yes. Just checking they're both connected.
Make sure they're level.
Yes. Patients will do DIY health checks from home to ease pressure on GPs. Sounds like a pretty good idea. 1 million digital tests are done each year. They're going to spot early signs of strokes, heart disease. Here's a classic case. You can see there's one half of his face slightly droops. Anyway... That's good acting.
No, that's not funny.
No, sorry. I apologise, sorry. So, but it's going to save, they're saying, like, each time, like, 20 minutes of GP's time. This is a good idea. They haven't really talked about how the equipment's going to get out there to people. There's an argument, of course, this is just another way of people getting asked to do the GP's job. But at the same time, if we can safely do this stuff at home, blood pressure, BMI and whatnot, then why not? And then they can highlight if there's an issue. So I think it's a good idea. Save some money. What do you think?
You check. I mean,
you've got all the time. You're trying to get us all to do blood tests earlier before the show. Did you do your own blood test?
The question, what is you want to ask a question?
Yeah, do you regularly check yourself?
I check my blood, and I check my blood pressure daily. I check my uric acid daily. I check my ketones daily, and I think we should all check that.
They all taste great.
If you don't have the right information about how to deal with those things, it's pointless. And the NHS isn't handling these things seriously.
Okay. But at least now, in the new way of doing it, and maybe there'll be more wearable tech that comes in as well.
Yeah.
The future might be some of these warning signs get spotted. You don't have to know them yourself. You don't have to look at your blood pressure and go, that's not the right one. But if you're reporting them to a system that can flag it up as like this person needs another test, then it might work.
Yeah.
It might work, but it won't work because then the NHS will give you some kind of recommendation which is totally ineffective.
Well, fortunately, you've got Lewis. We've got our own medical doctor. Yeah. And what people don't understand at home is that as we're trying to like read these stories, whatever, Lewis is walking around with a blood kit, testing us for blood and telling us what's wrong with us and what we're going to change.
And the people can see, Josh, how great I look.
It's true. It's true.
They can see how healthy I am, how thin. The number one thing you can do to check whether you're healthy or not is to get a tape measure and measure your waist. And if your waist is greater than half your height in inches or whatever it is, half your height.
It doesn't matter on the unit.
Doesn't matter. It means you're sick.
Short.
You're sick.
Okay.
It means you're sick. Just go right now and measure.
No. Wait till the end.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Not 3 minutes.
To The Guardian, Lewis, and seeing as I'm the member of this show that brings diversity, that's a good thing, but would it help me get a place in university?
Well, this is one of the most complicated issues, and the people won't understand where I'm coming from, so you're going to have to listen very closely. I think it was the wrong decision. What happened is the United States Supreme Court rules against affirmative action at Harvard and University of North Carolina cases because basically you've got to race-conscious admissions, and they're saying that is anti-constitutional for people to choose. But it's impossible to choose people at a school without looking at everything about them. And you don't want the government. It's just one more bit of centralization saying you can't make a decision the way you want to make a decision. Harvard University is a private university, and they should be allowed to do whatever they want to do. If they want to have a school that's entirely Jews or entirely Asians or entirely black people, they should be allowed to do it. It's a private business. The problem is when the U.S. government, the federal government, starts giving them money and starts dictating, and that's the problem we have here in Britain. It's too much centralization.
Josh, you in favour of this?
Well, I am...
Did you understand what I said?
Yes. Essentially, we're talking about affirmative action, which was ruled into law in 2003. They said it would take about 25 years. Now it's been cut a few years earlier than that. And the idea was that it would increase diversity. And as The Guardian says right here, that this is a huge blow to the cause of greater student diversity on campuses. That is misleading because it isn't a huge blow, because actually what they would argue is less people of colour is made up by other people of colour, essentially Asians. So you can look at the evidence, which is just literally look at the numbers, and you'll see that Harvard entrance of people from an Asian background, and it goes down year upon year since this policy has been in place. So it's not about if it's not really about diversity, it's about a different kind of diversity and getting other groups in. You know, I believe in equality. The best people should be there. Now, there are
That's not
arguments.
Equality.
Okay, whatever.
You mean in meritocracy?
Oh, yeah, fine. Meritocracy, fine. Look, I didn't go to Harvard. I don't know these big words like you. But the point is
surprisingly
that the best people should be, and the most appropriate people should be chosen.
And who should choose them?
Well, look, but it's wrong that there are people who, to not be racist, people are making racist decisions on the people of other people.
So who's going to...
No, I was going to say, there is a bit in the story that says
interview them.
that you can still mention your race in your open essay.
Yeah.
A lot of essays have got to open with exactly, as a person of, fill in all the things right there.
And they'll still be able to make the school will still be able to make the choice.
That's it for part 2, but coming up in part 3, putting chemicals into drinks might not be good for you, and you can now holiday in space, even though it's expensive and there's not much atmosphere. Boom. We'll see you in a few.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions, and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio, and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Welcome back to Headliners, to the Telegraph, Josh. And I bet you think this man is a kernel of truth.
Colonel forced out of army after stating men cannot be women. Kelvin Wright, he's had to resign following a warning from a junior officer that his views were at odds of the Ministry of Defence transgender policy. What were the views? He basically put something on his Facebook, private Facebook post, which was from a group called Fair Play for Women, and it was quoting Helen Joyce, who's written a brilliant book called Trans, and it says, if women cannot stand in a public place and say men cannot be women, then we do not have women's rights at all. That's all they did, this person, and from that, it started a massive investigation into him for substandard behaviour. I should point out this guy sounds like a bit of a hero. He's done 2 tours in Afghanistan and flying on choppers, and he's a commanding officer of reserve, 14 years, unblemished service, and all sort of come crashing down because of this statement that men cannot be women. I'm not in the army, so you can't get me, so I'll say it. Men cannot be women. I'm sorry that's hard for people to hear, but that's just a fact. Let's move on from that, and let's not get these people losing their jobs, and certainly when they're very good at it.
Lewis, why was he posting on a private Facebook page when he's a colonel?
Because I think he's got some rights. People don't have rights. I think they have rights. I think what's shocking about this story is how British people, they quit their jobs and then they sue. In America, at least with me, you wouldn't go back. They had to call the police to kick me out of the building. I am not leaving. You have to fire me and you have to call the police.
Well, you're trying really well.
Here, they quit and then they sue. The guy should have he should have said, you know what, you don't want me to do this, I'm not leaving, and you got to pay my salary.
Yeah, but they make it so untenable.
Yeah.
And they're questioning his honour and various... I think this guy's done 2 tours in Afghanistan. And because he says this very scientific truth...
And sue while you're there.
Well, he's suing now, and good luck to him. And the Free Speech Union are helping him out, and I hope that they absolutely destroy the people involved in this disgusting decision.
Moving on to
Men can't be women!
Moving on to the Metro, Lewis, and a story about some tasty L-aspartyl L-phenylalanine methyl ester.
Oh, my God, God bless you. That's why we have you here. You know stuff. Diet Coke ingredient to be declared possible cause of cancer. And it's according to the World Health Organization. And a couple of things. This is a complete non-story. It is sorry about that. It's a complete. Shame. First of all, not even the fact that it's World Health Organization is saying it. They cannot be trusted at all. They called meat a cancer causer, and that is completely not true. And so you can't trust them. But the thing is there's been this thing, aspartame,
L-aspartyl L-phenylalanine methyl ester.
Okay, it's been around for like 60 years. 40 years ago, they even had a committee checking on its safety. It's impossible to measure whether it's safe or not. My belief is, don't eat it. It's not safe. It's probably not safe because it's totally unnatural.
Don't listen to the WHO. Listen to Dr. Schaefer.
Dr. Schaefer
He's saying the same thing.
Yeah, says it's probably deathly, but they don't know that it's deathly. They don't know that it's deathly. And it's still, sweetener is still less dangerous than sugar in all its forms. That could be starch, whatever. That could be,
Josh, where's your stance on this one? Do you have a lot of aspartame?
Well, I've just got into Diet Coke, after years.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit gutted, to be honest. They basically say don't drink between 12 and 36 cans.
Okay.
That's the official advice.
A day.
So we'll see. But as you say here, they said mobile phones, that could be cancer causing. Red meat, cancer, you know.
Do you know, if you're worried about your Diet Coke because it's got this aspartame in it, another chemical that was recently identified as a carcinogen is acrylamide, which is the thing that makes toast brown. So if you cook anything and it goes slightly brown, slightly cooked, apparently that causes cancer. So if you don't eat anything that might cause cancer, you'll starve to death.
What about asbestos? Can I eat that?
Which is, why I don't cook food anymore. I'm on an all-raw diet, or I try to be, all-raw diet.
And can I just say that I'm sitting next to him and I can definitely ascertain that's true.
Nothing ever went wrong from not cooking things. No one ever died from not cooking things.
All raw, baby.
Yeah, cooking is actually worse than that. And the number one thing that causes food poisoning in this country are salads and salad bars and fresh vegetables.
Okay, for Ofcom purposes, we must say it might be scampy.
Well, you look it up. You look up how many, at least in America, how many reported incidents of food poisoning came from salads.
Yeah, right. Like they eat salad in America.
Versus raw.
I'm not going to believe that.
Meat.
That is the. No, I almost went with the COVID doesn't exist thing. You're telling me they eat salad in America? That's a lie.
They do. We're more advanced than you people.
On to the Independent, Josh. Police going undercover, and under the covers was wrong, apparently.
Oh yeah. Well, police spying unit should have been shut down in the 1970s. This has been ongoing, it feels like, for a long time. They did a big investigation into the investigation a few years ago. Now they're doing another one, and this is only the first part of it, and it's cost so far £64 million to find out that essentially, sort of pretending that they weren't, basically they slept with some people to get in with these organisations. They said only 3 of the organisations of the hundreds that have been investigated over the last 40, 50 years were actually worthy of being investigated. The rest were sort of Lewis Schaefer fan clubs or whatnot that they all did.
He slept with 3 policemen today.
to get in with him. But yeah, it's not. But then do you remember the film? Do you ever watch the football hooligan film ID?
No.
It's a great film. Anyway, it's great. You've ever seen it? Okay, well, whatever. It's like, but this was one of the tactics that is used. That's how you sort of get into these little groups and whatnot. But the fact it's cost $64 million for them to turn around and go, that's not. And I'm sure that's terrible. I mean, that's arguably. Is it rape? I mean, it's lying.
Yes.
You know, it's abuse.
It's very bad.
It is really bad, and for the people concerned, I think it is horrible. But this has just been going on and on, this investigation.
Lewis, have you ever lied to someone to sleep with them?
I think no.
Yeah, I don't have kids. What else have you said?
No, I try to be as honest as I can be, because then they don't believe me. They can't believe someone like me has so little money. So
makes a lot of sense. Moving on to the Daily Mail, Josh. First, they came for our prayer rooms, and I said nothing because you have to be quiet in there.
Oh, gosh. Hospital facing backlash after chaplain put up LGBT flags in prayer room for gravely ill children, leaving one practicing Christian mother shaking with anger. This is in a children's hospital, and it's the trans chaplain. And this Christian family and their child is a terminally ill toddler that's heartbreaking, and don't want to go in and prayer in a sacred space to have this ideology shoved down their throat. And I think that's fair enough. I don't know, if you went in there and it was like these prayer rooms, say she'd gone in, this mother, and it had been all decked out like a mosque, or it had been decked out like a synagogue, or it had been decked out. The point is, this is another ideology, and not one ideology should dominate in that space. It should just be a quiet area of reflection.
The story says they were temporarily put up to adorn it just for Pride Day.
Well, that's what they said. Just first of all, it's Pride Month, and then they said, it actually left up longer. And they also there were some flags there that actually represented some very polyamory,
which
and
is
various.
the only way to get a mortgage these days.
Yeah, exactly. But no, seriously, this is spreading an ideology. It's pushing it forward. It's in a children's hospital. It's totally inappropriate, and it's the wrong place. I'd argue anywhere is the wrong place for it. But certainly, this is.
Lewis, what do you think? I mean, we call it a prayer room, but it's a room for quiet reflection and meditation. Does that change it at all?
Well, it just says what the belief system is, which is that this is a religion that the LGBT plus AA is a religion.
The last one's a battery.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I mean, some religions, they have very dodgy starts, and then they become quite entrenched.
Well, there's the gender fluid flag.
Including the Mormons, who are very recent, the Seventh-day Adventists. There's lots of new religions which have gained respectability over time. And so maybe over time, this religion, we won't see the problem here.
Well, I think Josh will.
Possibly.
I think there is a chance of that.
Was I being very reasonable?
You're being really reasonable. We'll play that bit back. The Daily Mail now, Lewis, and is Blue Peter too sexual? I mean, the TV show, not when I use that as my stripper name.
Oh, Blue Peter. I don't think it's a stripper name. It says BBC is accused of using Blue Peter, which is a TV show, to promote LGBTQ plus agenda after broadcasting children discussing sexualities and gender identity at a Pride event, and this took place in Manchester at the Pink Picnic, and then they put it wasn't on TV, but it was, I think, on YouTube or something. And I always thought Blue Peter was something that I got when I was making out as a teenager. Was Blue Peter. Is that an old joke?
Blue Peters?
A Blue Peter.
Yeah.
You know what a Peter
Please explain it again. Go on.
I don't want to explain it because we were on. So it shows a drag queen in a Blue Peter episode talking about... Anyway, at the end of the day, it's the BBC, and the BBC is promoting the state religion, which is the LGBTQ plus, whatever it is. And that's the end of the day. The BBC is not the media. The BBC is the state propaganda network. It's the Big Brother communications
Josh,
department.
is there a difference between saying this show did a thing I disagree with and this show did a bad thing and I'll tell you why they did it? Guessing their motivation.
There is a difference, yes, but I would go with both of those.
All right.
In that, we cover this stuff a lot, okay? And I feel like we're at the tail end of this ideology, like it's been exposed now. But the fact that this stuff is still happening, it's still coming out, there's still this overt agenda to push it onto little kids. I got attacked last week. My two sons had a Pride session where the ideology was pushed onto them, right? And I got upset about it, said it online. People were like, oh yeah, well, you're for GB News and you're just making this up or you're whatever. It's like, I'm not making it up. I don't even think it's that big a deal. But the thing for me is like, we know about it now. So it's because I know about this stuff, I instantly spotted it. And when they came back and started talking about like 100 sexes and whatnot, I could just straight away zone in on that. And I think this is other people seeing this stuff that might have passed a year or two ago and been unnoticed because it's so under the edge. Like this little kid is like talking about how the loads of different people out there. Brilliant. Gay. Brilliant. Lesbian. Brilliant. Transgender. Brilliant. Or anything. Wait a minute. Or anything?
Do you not think that might be a kid just not knowing how to knock?
No, but that's my point. No, is that it's all this other stuff that's pushed through. You see these children's books. There's a book called Grandpa's Pride. And there's like little things like furries, like little nods to all these other things. This is how they get in there.
This is a much bigger issue. Josh thinks it might go away. We're reaching a peak. I don't think so. I think it's going to be the world religion. It's pushed by the internationalists. They don't want us.
Oh my God.
Oh
my God.
Time-wise, we've got to move on. That is it for part 3. In the final section, we've got cars that can fly and airline passengers that are so fat they can't. Find out more next.
What would you call them?
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
And action.
Sergeant read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Stop touching me, Lewis.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's jump straight into the Metro, Josh. Finally, the future we were promised. Not all culture wars and super gonorrhea. Flying cars.
Yeah, this Back to the Future, Blade Runner. End of traffic jams in sight as the first flying car is cleared for liftoff. This is a sort of £250,000 car in America. It's been given a legal approval to fly. It can basically go along normal roads and then it can sort of go psh, and then fly off. And supposedly you don't even need a special license for it, which is very cool. So it's very exciting. I will start saving now.
Yeah, what could go wrong? E-scooters are fine, so I'm sure letting people fly is going to go all right, isn't it?
No, I don't think it is. I think we've been prepared for these liftoff flying things since there've been airplanes. They predicted. Yes, since the Jetsons, since the Wright brothers, they thought this was going to be a thing. It's not going to be a thing because you need these super heavy batteries, and in every electric vehicle, and this is an electric vehicle. So it's going to be too heavy to fly. It'll be too heavy to drive. It'll be unusable.
Yeah,
maybe they can do like a train.
The Times, Lewis, and music can make you better at maths. My accountant must have learned to play the violin because he's been on the fiddle for years.
Yes, can help. This is a story coming out of Turkey, which is a Muslim country, but they like music, and I think maybe because Turkey.
You've been doing research. You've been going Wikipedia.
No,
or something.
I know. They have.
Hey, I'm going to show these guys some facts, everybody.
For half an hour.
I am incredibly knowledgeable, Josh. Because Turkey would like to be like the sort of the king of the.
What's the main industry of Turkey? Have you got it written down there?
No, I know it. Turkey is one of the largest producers.
Anyway,
of stuff.
we're really up against it time-wise in this section.
Is that this can help to improve maths? Right, can. Well, what kind of... They did studies and they found out. What kind of studies did they do? They did... Rich people...
Muslim studies.
Rich people like music. So probably rich people's kids who like music also are good at math. It's just a plain correlation. It's like...
Who could study correlation? If only there was a way, a discipline of science that could look at that.
There isn't that. It's called... You know who's expert at this? A guy named Carl.
Oh, yeah.
Who is Mr. Correlation, Mr. Association, Mr. Risk of, Mr. Linked to. And whenever you hear those words, whenever you hear the words can help children improve their maths, or could help children, or may lend lend itself to, well, this is what the article said, may indicate that there's no actual fact. It's not a scientific experiment.
We better move on to the Daily Mail. Josh, bad news if you think people who work in shops need a good kick up the backside.
Indeed, Asda checkout worker who was kicked at the backside by a smirking female colleague has won his sex discrimination case after he argued a man would have been sacked on the spot. He sounds like he's got a point. This is Asda. He got kicked out the bum, didn't say anything about it, then got kneed up the bum, had to go to a doctor for bladder issues, and then sort of complained to his boss about it, and the boss didn't do anything, complained again, and he's got a very feasible argument, and he's been found to be right, and he's right. If a man had done it to a woman, that person would have been fired on the spot. So,
and this is Asda, where they do hit themselves on the bottom quite a lot. That's Asda price. Yeah.
Is that what they do? And the shocking thing was, not shocking, I don't think it's that shocking, but the woman who was accused of kicking him in the bum said that he had touched her body, and which was strongly refuted. Let's assume that he didn't do that.
I think that we can learn from this that women can be bad human beings as well as men.
Shocking.
Yeah.
The Telegraph, Lewis. Are fat airline passengers excess baggage?
Well, it's a problem because people are getting bigger and bigger, and that the seats are basically getting smaller and smaller, and they don't know what to do. And this is a whole long article, The Telegraph. Do bigger people need bigger seats? Why overweight passengers are airlines' biggest problem? And it's obviously not why they're the biggest problem, because in this whole big article in The Telegraph, it said there's nothing they can do about it. So they're going to leave it alone. If it was their biggest problem, I think that they would spend more time thinking people are getting fatter and there's nothing they can do.
Can you fix it, Josh, in 30 seconds?
No, but a nice shout out there to Sophie Hagen, fellow comedian, who sent a lovely anti-Semitic tweet during the last election, and now she's saying she won't perform anywhere that doesn't have wide enough seats.
Alleged. That's what you.
No, it wasn't alleged. It was an anti-Semitic tweet, and she can call me out on it. Lots of people challenged her. She apologised for it.
Never thought it would be Lewis getting the complaints tonight. And the show is just about over. Let's say thank you to my guests. Let's take a quick look at the Friday's pages before we go, though, front pages. The Daily Mail, we should decide who comes here, not criminal gangs. The Telegraph goes with biggest NHS reform in its history to save £10 billion. The Guardian goes with Tories risk bitter legal feud after Rwanda policy is ruled unlawful. The Eye, mortgage deals hiked again as the big six banks raise their prices. Express says Rishi's radical plan to fix NHS once and for all. And finally, the Daily Star, Boffin's brains explode. Those were your front pages. Thank you. That's all we've got time for. Thank you to my guests, Josh Howie and Lewis Schaefer. We're back tomorrow at 11 with Leo, Nick and myself. We'll see you then.
What?
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the people's channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. In a moment, I will tell you what it's like to become a non-person in modern Britain and what my next steps are going to be. Tonight, we'll also cover the Rwanda judgment. It's a hammer blow for the government, but I have to say I'm not that surprised. And we'll talk about pride hypocrisy, companies that are very keen to advertise pride events in London and yet conduct business in parts of the world where prejudice against homosexuals goes even as far as the death penalty. But before all of that, let's get the news from Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you. Good evening. The top story tonight is that the Home Secretary says she remains fully committed to the Rwanda policy despite the legal setback. Suella Braverman also suggested the current system was rigged against the British people. And earlier, the Prime Minister said he fundamentally disagrees with the Court of Appeal after they deemed it unlawful. 2 of the 3 judges found the East African country was unsafe. The Rwandan government, for its part, disagrees, claiming it's one of the safest countries in the world. Well, the Home Secretary said the government is going to seek permission to appeal in the Supreme Court.
It's unfair, Mr. Speaker, on people and our partners in the developing world that we in the West continue to maintain an asylum seeker system so open to abuse that it incentivises mass flows of economic migration into Europe, lining the pockets of people smugglers and turning our seas into graveyards, all in the name of a phony humanitarianism.
Now, Thames Water has appointed a new chair amid pressures the company faces concerning its finances. So Adrian Montague, previously chair of Anglian Water, will take over the role on July the 10th and is replacing Sarah Bentley. Thames Water now says it's working with shareholders to secure extra funding as ministers draw up contingency plans to nationalise it in the event of its collapse. The UK's biggest water supplier is battling to service its £14 billion worth of debt following interest rate rises. Now, Boris Johnson's allies have been criticised by the Privileges Committee for what it describes as undermining House of Commons procedures. They include Priti Patel, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg and Nadine Dorries. The Privileges Committee report 2 weeks ago found the former Prime Minister had repeatedly misled Parliament over COVID-19 breaches at Number 10 during lockdown. The inquiry now says MPs should consider whether their actions could be in contempt of Parliament and what further action may need to be taken. Spying on left-wing groups by a secret Metropolitan Police squad wasn't justified in the past, and the unit should have been disbanded. That's after a public inquiry into undercover policing looked at the activities of the SDS, or the Special Demonstration Squad as it was known, between 1968 and 1982. A spokesperson for campaigners says the findings are devastating for the police, but the police has apologised for what happened over 40 years ago, saying that undercover policing has undergone complete reform since. Now, the 3 Just Stop Oil protesters who invaded the pitch at Lord's Cricket Ground yesterday have been charged with aggravated trespass. Judith Murray
Daniel Noor and Jacob Bourne disrupted the second Ashes test yesterday. They'll appear at Westminster Magistrates Court next month. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. 2 months ago, I received a phone call from my bank. Now, bear in mind, I'd been with the same banking group since 1980. I've had my personal account there with that group ever since that date. I ran my business through there when I worked in the city in the 1990s into the noughties, and today I have my personal and business accounts there. But 2 months ago, I get a phone call out of the blue from a personal manager, a new personal manager, not one I'd ever spoken to before, who simply says on a phone call, "We are closing your accounts." I asked why. No reason was given. I was told it would all be explained in a letter that would arrive in a couple of days' time. The letter just told me the accounts are closing and please, by the date they gave me, make sure you've moved to another bank. I did inquire further within the group. I sent an email to the chairman and I got someone ring me up and say it's purely a commercial decision. I thought. So I've tried for 2 months to get another bank account and I've spoken to 7 different banks and they've all said no. And the reason is it would seem to be political. I don't know precisely what the reason is, but there is a category of person called a PEP, a politically exposed person. It was a term that came into our law as a result of our membership of the European Union. I'm told that the city minister and the government are thinking about redefining it, but that may take some time. So it could be purely political. It could be, of course, prejudice. After all, I'm pretty used to prejudice that comes from the establishment against me. But I also worried very much that what was said in the House of Commons last year by Chris Bryant, Member of Parliament for South Wales, Labour member, chairman of the Privileges Committee, who used parliamentary privilege to say that in a calendar year I'd received £500,000 from the Kremlin. This was done under parliamentary privilege. I appealed to the Speaker, I appealed to Mr Bryant, but there have been no retraction whatsoever. There have also been extraordinary headlines written about me in all of the newspapers, some suggesting that on the night of the Brexit referendum, I engineered a coup along with the hedge funds where we pushed the pound up, shorted it, and we all made a fortune. Well, I'm afraid that isn't true either. But whatever reason, it's become clear to me that I cannot get a bank account. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that basically you've become a non-person. It's rather like living in Germany or Russia 80 years ago, or perhaps even communist China today. I wonder, are we living in communist China today in this country? Are we akin to communist China? Love your thoughts on that, please. Farage@gbnews.com. Well, all of this has been quite stressful and quite difficult, because without a bank account, you simply can't exist, you simply can't live. But what's even worse is that over the course of the last few months, some of these ridiculous rules and closures have been extended to my immediate family. And whilst I'm sad and annoyed about where I am, I'm absolutely incandescent that members of my family should be singled out and targeted just because I campaigned for and pushed a Brexit campaign for all of those years. This is truly and utterly disgusting. But it isn't just happening to me. I know of people going back nearly 10 years who were UKIP candidates, UKIP MEPs, others in prominent positions in the Brexit Party who also had their bank accounts closed. But none of them really had the voice to speak out. And I feel that I do. There are other people in media, too, who've had their media accounts closed down. And it seems to be all one way. It seems to be all against people who have traditionalist or conservative views. There is something totally outrageous going on here. So I've been considering, over the course of the day, my options. I've spent time talking to lawyers. I've been considering legal action. I've been asking myself whether, frankly, it's even worth staying in this country. I could go to one of the fintechs and I could get the ability of at least a payments mechanism, but it's not a bank account. It doesn't have a debit card. It wouldn't pay you interest on money, and you certainly wouldn't be able to borrow any money or get a mortgage if you wanted one in the future. So I've been seriously considering my options, and I said earlier on today that at 7 o'clock tonight, I'd tell you what my next steps were. Well, you could knock me down with a feather, because the phone rang at 7:15, and it was the bank that wants to close me down completely in a few weeks' time. They claim there's nothing political at all in what they're doing. It's purely a commercial decision. And it was said to me on the phone a few minutes ago, they could get me a personal account with another bank that is part of the same group, but that doesn't apply to the business account, so frankly, isn't of much use to me. I'm used to battling against the odds. I'm used to being prejudiced against in the most extraordinary way. And I'm generally pretty tough in fighting through these things. But just for once, I'm really pretty thoughtful about whether it's actually worth living in this country right at the moment. So what I am going to do is take some time off, take a week or two off, maybe more, to consider what my next steps are going to be. This is going on in our country. It's happening to plenty of people. I just happen to be one of them. But you know what? Unless this rot is stopped, in time to come, you at home may say things on Facebook or Twitter that may result in you losing your bank accounts too. That, I think, is how scary this whole thing is. Now, joining me, somebody who's been through a similar experience, is Toby Young, founder and General Secretary of the Free Speech Union. And Toby, you were cancelled, weren't you?
I was cancelled too, Nigel. So last year, PayPal closed my personal account, the account of the Daily Skeptic, my news publishing site, and the account of the Free Speech Union, all within 15 minutes of each other, without any notice and without any adequate explanation. I kicked up an enormous stink about it, just like you're doing, and lo and behold, all three accounts were restored a couple of weeks later. But I've been campaigning ever since, lobbying the Treasury and government ministers, trying to persuade them to change the financial regulations to make it unlawful for banks and payment processors like PayPal to withdraw custom from its users for purely political reasons, which appears to be what has happened in your case. It's absolutely outrageous. It's a sinister, possibly the most sinister form of cancel culture. As you say, it's the kind of thing we'd expect to see in communist China, but it isn't the kind of thing we should welcome in a supposedly free country like ours.
No, and Toby, funny enough, it wasn't just my bank that closed me down, but Coinbase as well at the same time sent me an email to say that I was closed down. I have gone to lawyers already, and I've gone for subject access requests, which means the bank will have to release data they hold on me, and all the big agencies, you know, WorldCheck and all the big agencies that banks refer to will have to give me data. The problem is they don't have to respond for up to 180 days, which is well over my deadline. Toby, it used to be a right in this country that people could have a bank account. That was the law. All the while, the post office was a nationalised business. That has now been removed. There are 1.3 million people now without bank accounts. Some of them don't want to have bank accounts. But have you spoken, I mean, since you caused a real hue and cry over this, have you spoken to many other people in our industry, in politics, in campaigning, who were cancelled too?
Yep. Konstantin Kissin and Francis Forster, who run a very good podcasting website called Trigonometry, they were debanked. Yep. Several members of the Free Speech Union had a guy contact me a few weeks ago, Nigel, who said that he learned that his bank account had been closed when he tried to pay for his groceries with his Visa debit card in a supermarket. The card was declined. He called the bank and he discovered only then that his bank account had been closed. Today, Nigel, someone contacted the Free Speech Union today. They were banking with the Yorkshire Building Society, and they responded to a request for feedback from the Building Society last week. And he fed back and said, why are all your branches festooned with pride flags? Why don't you stick to your knitting? Why are you making these statements? What's it got to do with banking? And just for saying that, he was informed by the bank that they were closing his account. If you debunk, Nigel, you get debanked.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. Now, look, I did also inform the city minister that I was having problems as well. And obviously, it's not his job to deal with any individual cases, and I fully understand and respect that. Is there any realistic prospect that this rather collapsing, chaotic government is going to do anything about this?
I'm reasonably optimistic for once, Nigel. We submitted evidence to the Treasury a couple of months ago, which had a consultation about the financial regulations that apply to payment services providers, and that includes banks as well as companies like PayPal. We submitted reams of evidence, loads of people who'd been debanked purely for political reasons, many of them without any notice, almost all of them without any adequate explanation, just like in your case. And I'm hoping that in response to all this evidence we submitted to this consultation, that the Treasury is going to say, you know what, this is a problem. We need to do something about this. We need to stop the emergence of a Chinese-style social credit system in Great Britain. So I am reasonably optimistic, and I hope that you publicising what's happened to you will nudge the government just a little bit more into doing something.
Yeah, I suspect many viewers don't know about the Chinese social credit system, but we will, over the next couple of weeks, explain it to them, because you're quite right, this is where it could go. Now, on a slightly lighter note, do you think we should form a luncheon club, the Debanked?
Well, Nigel, the funny thing about cancel culture is that the ranks of the cancelled just keep growing and growing. And actually, it's becoming quite an attractive club. I can imagine many people in future rather regretting not being cancelled, because the club of the cancelled is so distinguished and the people in it are so much more fun to hang out with than the ranks of the uncancelled. So, yeah, we should form a club.
Well, I tell you what, let's call it a date, Toby. When I'm back from my break, whatever that is, we will go out together and raise a glass. Thank you very much indeed for all the great work you've done on this subject.
Cheers, mate.
So you see,